Greetings, brothers. Welcome to this week's tactics video. Today we're going to do a bit of a masterclass on how to get the most out of your jump marines on the tabletop. With the new codex coming out, we may be fielding more jump marines than ever before. So how you position them in the games, how you use terrain, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses, sort of like a general overview of how you should be using your jump marines or how you should be considering playing them when you're in games of 40k. So let's jump into this week's tactics video. Hello and welcome. If you were just meeting, my name is John, the Blood Angels Commander, and let's talk about Space Marine jump units. Like, what are their strengths? They've got brilliant speed and staging potential. They do become more powerful in the late game because people have less units on the board and they can get from objective to objective much quicker. They're able to react to many threats. They're able to jump around and basically threaten anywhere on the board. They can be deployed both offensively and defensively, and that can change very quickly. As in one turn, they could go from being well out of range of the enemy to threatening and being very dangerous. What are their weaknesses, though, right? They're low toughness and average survivability, I would say. They're very expensive in a points per model basis. So, like, if you lose a single Sanguinary Guard, it's 31 points. It hurts a lot. They're also vulnerable to blast, usually coming in squads of 5s or 10s. And they're also vulnerable against mortal wounds. Most typically, they don't have any saves against mortal wounds, and with the change to the Sanguinary Priest, they won't have any saves against mortals as well. So, let's talk about maps and missions. And obviously, this is the UKTC layout maps, and you can see the deployment zones marked clearly on the board, as well as all the objectives and then all the terrain pieces. So this is a typical map you would see at a UKTC event here in the UK. So if you're going to an event or any sort of game of 40k, if you know the layout beforehand or when you first see the table, you need to be looking at the table and figuring out where can I place my jump units, that they are completely obscured, as in there's no chance of them being shot by the opponent in turn one. And a good place here in this map would be right in here, in either of these two pieces of obscuring terrain or just behind them. You have a great easy jump, 12 inches onto the middle objective. So basically, if you had multiple jump units in here, you could send one out per turn. You could probably kill what's on the objective with your one unit and hold it. Potentially, after you've killed it, you are going to be sitting ducks, and that's why you possibly only want to send out one per turn, or you want to send out one to kill and have another more durable unit or a unit of scouts or something you can throw on, because it's unlikely you're ever going to hold an objective with one unit on it. The opponent just targets that one unit, they kill them. As I said, jump units aren't super survivable typically. So putting one unit on the objective, you will probably clear what the enemy is off, but then you probably want to hold it back in your turn. So on a map like this, you can see straight away there's two pieces of terrain, and this is one of the reasons that Blood Angels are doing so well in the meta. With increased terrain density, there are more places, especially in this map, sweeping engagement there's two places. There's this location here and there's this location here, both of which it's an easy 12-inch jump onto the objective. You shoot what's ever on the objective, you charge what's ever on the objective, and you take it. So you could literally quite happily on this map hold these two for an entire game, and every turn send one jump unit out and take these. If you want to see how, like, I was doing my rapid ingress, because rapid ingress is super strong and works really well with jump units as well, I made a few videos on the tournament that I recently won, saying that basically in that tournament, every single turn 2 and turn 3, I always rapid ingressed a jump infantry unit. And I guess the same thing would apply in that maybe I didn't deploy anything down here, so in turn 2 I would rapid ingress a unit in here, so they're completely obscured, they're completely safe, and they will potentially threaten right onto the opponent's objective. And the great thing with rapid ingress is if you place them like 12.1 inches away, then they're out with 12, so your opponent can't declare them as a charge target. Jump infantry, move 12 inches, so you move forward 12 inches. You really can't fail your charge at that point. Snake eyes and you will still have a successful charge. So I'm not going to focus too much on what's secondaries. I'm just going to look at each map, and each map has great positions that you could set up in here. Now, map number 2 here is Crucible of Battle, and I think Crucible of Battle is a great, it's one of the better ones, but it's a great one again for jump infantry, because there's two pieces here. There's this piece here back in your home deployment, in your home deployment, and there's this piece just in front. So what I like to do in turn 1 is probably set up a unit here or here in this piece with the intention of jumping or finishing a move completely obscured in this big piece here. And if I get behind this and and I'm behind this in any shape or capacity, again, I can threaten middle super easy. Now, this one can be a little bit more tricky to get to, but again, if I'm near this corner and I'm here, a 12-inch jump from here will take me almost to this piece of terrain, and then it could be an easy 5 or 6 inch charge onto that objective. So there's two I'm threatening pretty easily. And then the third one, which is essentially this third no man's land one, if I start my units against this wall here, and I've played this one a lot, there is a very potential easy jump onto this one, or start some units back here. Again, easy jump on. And this is why Blood Angels, or armies with a lot of jump infantry, are doing very well at the moment. So in my list, I like to take some more durable stuff, because like I said, when the jump infantry get on the objective and they kill the enemies on the objective, they typically don't survive. So that's why I like to have some Outriders. Outriders are quite good at surviving with their toughness 5. Impulsors are quite good. Company Heroes are quite good. So I think that if you mix the jump infantry with some of those more survival units, then you're laughing, right? And on this Crucible of Battle, be aware of these pieces of terrain that you might not really expect, because if your opponent isn't going to leave anything back here in this corner, because why would they? This objective is a little bit further pushed forward than the one up here, right? So if they do not leave something in this backfield, and some opponents will, because some opponents will be smart to your rapid ingress, but some won't. And if they ever leave this open, then that's an easy deployment in here with rapid ingress, 12-inch jump onto the objective. So I really think before the game, you should really be thinking about, where can I have my infantry where they are very safe? And one of the things that I even do when I'm playing on Crucible of Battle is I often leave a unit of Death Company on my home field objective right here. Because if you take this corner here of this piece of terrain and you measure towards the middle, if you got a guy right in this corner and he went 12 inches diagonally, he'll probably be right in this terrain as well. So you can have a unit of jump infantry way back here. Typically I use 5 Death Company for this, way back here. So this means, like with my infiltrators in the Death Company, nothing is coming in my side of the board. Nothing is coming into my deployment zone. If it is, it's probably coming in way over here, or it's coming in way over here. And in both those positions, I can use that unit of Death Company to instantly clear those models up in my turn. And if nothing does come in, because the 12-inch deep strike denial from the infiltrators is considerably large around this backfield objective, then if nothing does come in turn 2 or 3 when I feel like I'm pretty safe and nothing's coming in, those Death Company have an easy 12-inch jump to here, and it's another way to threaten the middle. So pretty much every map in 10th edition now is 5 objectives. I don't think we play 6 objective maps anymore. We play 5. So really you're just thinking about 3. And if we agree this one's easy to hold because there's multiple places I could deploy units, 3 places in fact that I could jump onto this one, then there's this huge piece of terrain that I could deploy multiple jump units behind to threaten on this one, then that's all I need to do, right? Hold my home field, take this one because it's super easy to get, and then just threaten the middle the whole game. And if you saw my game against Orcs last week, I actually used rapid ingress to drop some jump infantry here just to clear his sort of no man's land objective, if you like, because I guess it's the closer one, or it feels closer to, so it's sort of his natural. Some people talk about like a natural objective. This one feels natural, right? Because there's this piece of terrain potentially giving you a lot of cover, so this could be classed as your natural objective. So if this was his natural objective, I just dropped, I think in turn 2 I dropped a unit of Death Company, in turn 3 I dropped a unit of Assault Intercessors, and I just kept clearing them off this objective as well. So while I'm clearing them off the middle, I'm also clearing them off this one, and then I'm just holding this one quite happily for points, right? Points is prizes. So let's move on. The next map we've got to look at is Search and Destroy. Now this is a 6 objective map for UKTC because they take hidden supplies, and hidden supplies is the one time that you do get 2 in the middle, I guess, because the middle objective splits in half. So you got 4 across the middle, but again you've got this piece of terrain here which gives you a jump onto this one and a jump onto this one. You've got this piece of terrain here which would jump onto either of the middle 2, and then I guess you could argue that you could have a unit here that would jump that way, and you could try and take what would arguably maybe even be his natural. But I usually find, imagine if this hadn't split, I usually find it's a good idea to, you know, like if I was playing this map, I'd probably put 5 jump infantry here behind this wall with the idea of threatening that one. And if the middle hadn't split, then I could have a bunch of units here that would potentially threaten on the middle, and I could jump some units into almost my natural. I guess this would be my natural because I have the terrain piece that's more defensible. And then I could hold this one, I could hold middle, and I could just have like 1 or 2 jump units every turn just sort of threaten onto his. Because it's split, I guess you maybe need something more durable to come into the middle. And, you know, if these two are so close together, I believe there's only 6 inches between them. So if he holds one and you hold one, there's going to be charges between. So this map is actually a little bit more tricky. But again, it's all about staging your jump infantry. So look for the staging places. And I think on this map, there are 3 good staging areas. And anytime, I suppose, that there are spaces for rapid ingress, then consider that as well. And again, when you're rapid ingressing, you should be thinking about staging. Very rarely do you ever want to bring rapid ingress units down in a position where they can be shot. You're probably going to have a bad situation if you do that. Like Blood Angels Toughness 4 infantry very rarely survive shooting. You're not going to typically survive against like even enemy Overwatch if they've got flamers. So if you're bringing a unit down in the open in rapid ingress, then expect to lose quite a few guys. So like typically when you're rapid ingressing, you need to look like, because you can bring units in the open. Like you could bring, there is no cover over here. You could bring some guys rapid ingress down here to threaten this. I guess the question you would have to decide is, if I put them here, am I obscured from like enough of their shooting? And I guess that is a question that can be answered. And if you feel confident about it, then go for it. But quite often in my games, I would rapid ingress units back into my deployment zone, right? Like I would have no problem rapid ingressing a unit in here behind this position or into my natural position, maybe 9 inches behind this wall or something. If I think that I'm going to lose one of these objectives and I want to show a lot of strength on it in the next turn, I would rapid ingress here so I knew that I had an easy 12-inch move forward and an easy charge to take an objective or just show strength on an objective, because the game is all about objectives, and jump infantry right now are very powerful at flipping objectives and taking objectives and doing it all across the map, and they're so cheap. Like you can use MSU units. What I mean by that is you can use like 5-man jump assault marines to clear quite a few different types of units off objectives, right? Sometimes you have to use more than just the 5 jump assault intercessors. Sometimes you use 5 death company, but there is ways to, you know, you get to react to that. If the enemy put, let's just say like 5 dire avengers or something on an objective, then yeah, you would think that my 5 assault intercessors, if I can jump them on, would actually clear that pretty effectively. So that's why it's good to have some in reserve. That's why it's good to use the rapid ingress. But I think that you want to also have those threats on the board. So we get to have a lot of jump infantry in our lists, right? Like my list that I recently won the GT with had 30 jump infantry, and that included like, I had like 4 tanks, one of which was a transport, and I had a couple of more durable squads that could stand on objectives, and I had infiltrators. So it's like, you could still have a lot of jump infantry, but you can still do a lot of other stuff as well. So okay, let's move on to the next map. Okay, and now we have a variant of the last map, but with only one objective. So the same thing very much stands. I suppose the only other interesting thing is these new pieces of terrain that are line of sight blocking, but they don't actually block anything moving through. They potentially just give even more staging, right? Because if you've got the enemy pushed back, say that you've expanded on this natural and you've got some units staged here, and you've got some units staged behind here. If you wanted to get to their home field objective, I guess your option would be to try and stage behind this wall here, which could be dangerous because maybe they could charge you. So maybe you can stage here. I guess the thing about one of the things that I wrote down, and we're going to come to a slide in a minute that has like a summary of what I thought in terms of like how you best use these jump infantry. I was trying to think to the GT that I played. And I want to say, I don't think I ever had to do like a charge with a jump infantry unit that was more than like 5 or 6 inches, right? Occasionally, maybe I have to do a charge with like a unit that's on foot because I have like company heroes and I've got, you know, infiltrators or whatever, some guys that don't have jump packs, and maybe sometimes I would do like a 8-inch, 9-inch, 10-inch charge, and it's kind of like a Hail Mary if you're familiar with American football. I'm throwing the football 80 yards down the pitch, and I'm hoping that one of my guys in the end zone catches it, and it's a 50-50 at best, and that's what an 8 or 9 or a 10-inch charge is. They're 50-50 at best, right? You don't really want to be relying on them ever to do well in a game of 40k. But I think with jump infantry, bearing in mind if you stage them correctly, there should be very few times where you ever need to charge more than 5 or 6 inches. And if you have a reroll on a 5 or 6 inch charge, bear in mind if you have a reroll on a 7-inch charge, it's like an 81%. So if you have a reroll on like a 5 or 6 inch charge, your charge probability is in the 90s. Even more, I guess, if you get below 5 or 6. But I guess my point is, very rarely, if ever, do I need to charge on more than 5 or 6 inches. So if you find yourself with jump units, and you find yourself having to make 8-inch charges, 9-inch charges, then probably you need to go back to thinking about the map, thinking about your movement more, and deciding what you're doing wrong, right? And if you're getting some value out of today's video at this point, please do consider hitting the like button, or you could subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me every week. And remember, if you do not click the bell and set your notifications to all, then YouTube will not show you all my content, which is fine, I guess, but I like it when more people view my content, so please do consider pressing the bell icon on the YouTube channel as well. Okay, next up we have Crucible of Battle, and again, let's look at staging areas, and it's very similar to some of the terrain layouts we've seen already. Again, great staging areas. There's two ways to threaten the natural, a great big area to threaten the middle, and potentially also threaten onto their side. So when you're playing these maps, you'll see very quickly they are all very similar, right? Like once you figure out where you stage, and one thing I suppose I haven't said is, like, if you stage a unit here in turn 1 with the intention of going to the natural and you don't need it, let's say they don't put you, say you deployed your scouts on the natural and they realize that's your natural expansion, they think it's quite defensive and they never go there, then what I end up doing quite often is I will reposition these other staged units and I'll advance them, because they've got bolt pistols most of the time, so they're not really shooting anything. So I've seen myself have a unit staged here, turn 1 maybe, you know, this felt pretty safe, so I just advanced them over here. Turn 2, again, I just advanced them over here, and now they're staged to potentially hit the middle, which is, you know, usually by like turn 3 or 4, there'll be action in the middle, right? But I guess the important thing was, never once did I leave these guys in the open. Like, if I could have just, you know, like if I'd just gone straight towards the middle from turn 1, like, oh, nothing's happening, let's jump them 12 inches forward. You know, he shoots them with some units, I take incidental losses, okay, it's only 2 or 3 assault intercessors out of a score of 10, I'm still feeling good about that, but then I jump them forward again, he shoots them again, now I've only got 4 intercessors left out of a score of 10. Pretty much every time you get shot with a unit and you take heavy losses, then you need to be looking at yourself and was like, is there a situation where I didn't take any losses? Another thing I could have done is I could have advanced them onto this objective with the intention of another potential staging this way. And then the other thing that's interesting about being behind this natural was, if he is staging units over here and they are slower moving units, like I just played orcs this week and he had 2 buggies behind here full of knobs and mega knobs that were going to threaten the middle. If I was behind this objective, then I would have a potential jump over to get and threaten his staged units, right? Because when you're playing orcs, it's all about trading. So if I could lock up a bunch of his staged units on his side of the board and meanwhile have another unit hold the objective, then I get points and maybe that wins the game. And that was pretty much precisely what I did when I won the GT, and that the orc player hadn't called his WA, and I knew that his mega knobs only have their feel no pain during the WA, so I actually used, it wasn't a unit of jump intercessors in that game, it was actually a unit of company heroes, but my point stands in that I used a unit to engage him in his staged area, and I didn't expect to kill him in the staged area. All I wanted to do was slow him down and stop him jumping onto the middle, and I would hold the middle, and I would hold it for an extra turn, and his stage units would be all like, we sometimes say tar pitted in 40k, and what I mean by tar pitted was that they're just engaged with the unit that's going to take them a couple of turns to kill. So they're in a tar pit in that they can't move out of that tar pit with any sort of level of effectivency. So I tar pitted one of his units of mega knobs in his own deployment, because I knew they were staged there, and I felt like if I left them staged there, the second I put anything on the middle, he's just going to kill it. So the better play for me was to try and get to his staging units, and I believe I did that from an impulsor parked in this piece of terrain. I think they came round, like then they came out the impulsor, they moved, and then they made a charge round a corner. And I've actually got the video. I'll be putting that on the channel probably next week. The video of the GT win and how I made that play. But it's important to note that, like, although you will be worrying about where you are staging your units, the enemy is going to do it too. And sometimes if you can mess with their staged units, that can actually win you the game too. Okay, and then the last mission, we are back to search and destroy. And this is 6 objectives again. We actually looked at this layout altogether. So you can see in the UKTC tournament, they're playing very similar layouts across 6 different games. In every game, there's multiple places that I can stage my jump infantry. And as a Blood Angels player, you're probably going to want like 30 jump infantry. I know the new codex is coming, so everything will change. But I was basically telling people that I recommend you probably have at least 15 Death Company, a lot with Power Fists, and then at least like 10 jump assault intercessors. So that would be 25 jump infantry. In my list, I actually 10 assault intercessors, 10 Death Company, and 10 Sanguinary Guard for 30 total. But 30 total seemed like a nice number. For me, it felt like I had a good number of jump infantry, but it felt like a good number of utility across the list. But you could go a bit higher than 30. I wouldn't go much less than 25 though. If you're considering making a Blood Angels army with a lot of jump infantry, I think 25 should probably be the minimum you're aiming for. That might all change now that Sanguinary Guard are coming in 6s, but only time will tell. I'll make that video as soon as I can. And then here's a real world example. And in this real world example, you can see that I have a unit staged here, and the idea would be that they would be able to move out of there and charge anything on the middle very easily. I've used a cheap unit of Outriders. There was actually a unit of Scouts in here as well, but he'd killed them. So a cheap unit of Outriders and Scouts were holding my natural, if you like to call it that, because it's defensible and I can hide behind it. And then I'd actually had a unit of Assault Intercessors right against this wall with the intention of jumping forward and making a charge into these bikes. And the reason that they are behind the wall here was so that I could make the charge into the bikes from an obscured position. I rolled the friggin' snake eyes on this charge, and I think if I'd rolled a 3, I made it, because I'm flush against the wall and the bikes are like just beyond that piece of terrain you can see there. So I think this terrain is like 3 inches deep. So any roll other than a snake eyes, and because this was turn 1, I'd used my CP elsewhere. I can't remember where. I actually think I overwatched one of these buggies, and I think I did a lot of damage to it, and I think the Overwatch was worth it. But actually, in hindsight, having the charge go off and taking him off the objective would have actually been like a lot more points. But it is what it is, I guess. Not often do you roll the snake eyes. But yeah, here's me saying, like, in the tournament, I never had to make a more than a 5 or 6 inch charge. But yeah, it just shows that the one time you don't have any CP, you can still roll that double 1. So this is why 7, 8, 9 inch charges are just off. They're just not an option. You should never be doing them with jump infantry. If you're going to move your guys and try and make a 7, 8 or 9 inch charge, that's probably the wrong move. You should probably not move those guys. So yeah, I jumped out of here. I went flush against the wall so that I could charge from an obscure position and prevent any Overwatch. And that's the way it goes. So yeah, but you can see here, there is a unit, like I said, I like to deploy a unit of Death Company in my home field objective. You can actually see one guy there. They are 1 level up. And even from the home field objective, this big piece of terrain that's typically on the home field, 12-inch jump will probably pretty comfortably put them all in behind this wall. So the second he puts anything on that midfield objective, right, I've got the Death Company that can do a jump. I actually, at this point, the company heroes were behind this wall. The Impulsor got killed early in the game. It was probably maybe a little bit of a bad deployment. I guess if an Impulsor is getting killed turn 1, that just shows you how much firepower enemies can have. And this is why your jump infantry can never be not obscure turn 1, right? So the company heroes, if they were in the Impulsor, they would have had a 9-inch move out, the 3 plus the 6, easy threaten on the middle. Because the Impulsor isn't there, they have a little bit more of a dangerous charge here, and if they move 6, they're probably getting to about this line. So to hit the other side of that objective is probably an 8. So these guys, if they'd been in the Impulsor, then it would have been like perfect. We're doing 5 or 6 inch charges. these guys came out here, they would have had an easy charge that way. The Death Company coming out the middle, or coming out the home field, they could have an easy charge as well. So, yeah, staging your units is the most important thing. And then, like I said, rapid ingress can be super important, but I obviously... This was the third game I played at the GT, and I've already made 4 videos. One about each of the 4 games, and in each of those 4 games, I basically was relying on my 10-man Sangre Guard and a 5-man Death Company to do a lot of damage from rapid ingress. So if you're struggling with rapid ingress, those would be the videos to watch. They're all live on the channel, and every single game, the Death Company, the Sangre Guard did a lot of damage from the rapid ingress. So basically I had 15 jump infantry on the board, and I had 15 in deep strike every single game, right? So, in summary, if you want to be a master of jump infantry or a master of the Blood Angels, you need to prevent any line of sight to your jump infantry whenever possible. Now, I understand when you kill an enemy unit on an objective with a jump infantry unit, it's probably going to be unlikely that you can get back out of line of sight. You're probably going to be stuck on that objective unless there's like a great target you can consolidate into. So that's when they will die at that point, and that's kind of expected behavior. Maybe if it's a 10-man led by Lamartas or something, they won't die, but for the most part, they will die at that point, and that is why I'm saying if you want to reliably hold objectives, you want to put a second unit onto that objective, a more durable unit if you can. Impulsors are great at this, and in the meta for Blood Angels right now was actually like a couple of impulsors. So that's what you're going to want to do. Prevent the line of sight to jump infantry whenever it's possible. I also think it's better to wait a turn and set up and stage for that low charge that I've talked about a lot in this video, rather than to be left exposed in the open. The second jump infantry are left exposed in the open, your opponent knows how damaging those are. They know how lethal Death Company are, they know how dangerous Sangre Guard, hell, they know how 40-odd chainsword attacks on those assault intercessors still rip open anything. They are going to shoot your infantry with everything they have. It doesn't, like my list had a couple of tanks in it, it doesn't matter. If they have line of sight on your infantry, they're going to blow up your infantry because they know that like the core of the Blood Angels force is all those melee attacks. So I would much rather give up a turn. And again, I always seem to manage to score a lot of points towards the end of the game, because if you keep those units alive, you prevent the opponent scoring them. When the game starts to get strung out and your opponents are a little bit weak, that's when jump infantry units can go from objective to objective, just rolling over everything, killing everything. It's very effective. Rarely should ever have more than a 5 or 6 inch charge on those jump infantry. Yes, you can have longer charges than other units. We touched on that already. You want to prevent enemy overwatch when possible. So if the damage is ever going to be significant, right, like you're fighting people with Land Raider Redeemers, or you're fighting Death Shroud Terminators, or hell, yeah, I would say that then you want to move your infantry to a position where they're obscured, and you make that charge from an obscured position. Yes, you maybe have to give up some additional damage you could get from like in pistols or grenades or whatever, but it's usually worth it, because toughness 4 infantry really don't survive all that well, and there's a few armies that are deadly against toughness 4 infantry. I can think Death Guard with all their flamers, Space Marines with Land Raider Redeemers, Harlequins with Drukhari with all their anti-infantry firepower, or anti-infantry 2-up, 3-up sort of nonsense. So, yeah, and then I do this literally every week. Like, if you're struggling with this every week, then come every single Wednesday night on the channel. We typically do a live battle report. There's very rarely a time where I will have less than 30 jump infantry. The last 4 or 5 weeks I've just been playing my tournament list over and over. It does include 30 jump infantry. Like I said, 10 Sangre Guard, 10 Death Company, 10 jump assault intercessors. I could actually put more jump assault intercessors in there and remove the outriders. But I quite like having some durable units, and that's where the outriders seem to synergize pretty well with my list. But by all means, you could probably drop to the 2 squads outriders and have almost 40 jump infantry. And it's all about staging, and Blood Angels are winning a lot of games at the moment. We are very high in the meta. We have like a 53% win rate last time I checked. So if you do this right and you follow the advice that I gave in this video, this should elevate your jump play to the next level, I would have thought. And once you figure it out, it's actually pretty simple to do, right? Like there's nothing difficult. It's just repetition remembering, and then, yeah, maybe a little bit of screening. So yeah, there's been a few tournament games as well that I've struggled in. I think before, when I wasn't running infiltrators, and this is one of the things that I really rate about infiltrators, is screening your backfield so your opponent cannot jump in and target those jump units can be very important. And another thing you can do is, if you do have some cheaper units like Outriders, like Scouts, sometimes I will position those Scouts or Outriders daisy chained in front of the more vital jump units. So if your opponent does want to charge you in those staging positions, like we just talked about us charging the opponents and causing them problems in their staging positions, if we charge our opponents, or our opponents are able to charge us, they will have to kill like a unit of Scouts, or they have to kill a unit of Outriders. Outriders are actually kind of great because they have really long bases, and if you turn them diagonally or turn them 90 degrees, they can screen out like a huge area. So sometimes I'll use like a cheaper unit, or the Impulsor is another good one, to basically place them at the front of the staging unit, so, or the front of the staging position. So if the opponents are able to move close to the staging position and charge your staging position, they're going to charge my Impulsor. I'm totally fine with that if it prevents them charging, let's say, 5 Death Company, 10 Jump Intercessors behind that then can use the staging position that I set up to go do a bunch of damage and potentially win me the game. So that is sort of an overview, very brief, on mastering some of the basics of jump pack gameplay, or jump pack assault, whatever you want to call it. Please leave me a comment if you've got questions. Hopefully you found this useful. The Blood Angels Codex and new releases are coming very soon. I've got a bunch of videos on the channel covering them. I'll have more in the coming weeks. Please consider liking, subscribing, or supporting me on Patreon if you want to see more videos from me. Thanks so much. Welcome to all the new members. We've had a ton of new members this month, so welcome, welcome, welcome. If you've got any Blood Angels questions, please put them in the comments. And when the new box does release, or all the new units are out, I will be making a video on how to start playing Blood Angels, or how best to create an army from the new releases, so it's super clear for any new players. So that's coming too. So I will see you next week, guys. Thanks ever so much for watching. Stay strong, my brothers, by the blood. Peace.